Follow us on Twitter. We post a lot about AI music, neural synthesis, vocal synthesis. We post papers. We talk about what different music groups are building. We post about competitions and all that stuff. So follow us. And if you yourself also generate music, um, definitely share it with us, and we'll repost it. And if you're working on interesting new techniques, also could be interested in collaborating as well. This is me and Zach. So we do 80% music, 20% research. Like only a fifth of what we're doing is actually writing in TensorFlow or Theano or PyTorch and writing papers. 80% of it is like, let's make some really, really cool music. Let's work with artists. Let's post it on social media. And yeah, we're just doing it for the love of music. We're originally musicians and then later became programmers. um, and we hope to go on tour again. We are most well known for making AI death metal and eliminating humans completely from music. So a lot of AI groups in music, they're like doing this collaborative method. This is what Harry does. This is what a lot of the AI song contest groups were doing. That I think you guys met Vincent last time. Mostly not us. We make algorithms that just generate this stuff, on its own. That's what we're interested in. And eventually bots just listening to music made for bots. Our research focuses on neural audio synthesis. This is generating digital audio with neural nets. I think a lot of you guys are familiar with this, but I'll just give you a little primer. This is what audio looks like at the sub-millisecond scale. It's a sequence of amplitudes. And so you can use predictive models that generate sequences to also generate audio. And at the time when we started in like 2016, it was unknown if neural nets could generate like audio that had structure to it, especially like not musical structure. It was, it seemed like, these things would have to be so big, just like there's hundreds of thousands of time steps just within a couple seconds of audio. Like, how the hell are you possibly going to have a neural net that can see all those patterns? So we're all like very, very surprised when we were able to generate like stable sounding music, relatively stable sounding music, just with very large LSTM nets. Our very first example of our experiments is we threw in Kurt Cobain acapellas into this very large LSTM net. And we thought maybe it'd be noise or silence, but no, this is what happened. You guys are laughing, so I think that means audio works. So it screamed Jesus. And Zach and I looked at each other, our heart skipped a beat. And we're like, should we really be doing this? Are there ethical problems with reanimating dead singers? Is this some kind of seance? It felt weird, so we knew it was important, and we had to keep going. So interestingly enough, we started by forking a GitHub project that was built to do speech synthesis. It wasn't made for music, really. It was a sample RNN, and this later became like a text-to-speech service, Lyrebird. So this is what their net looked like in Theano. And then we had to do this architecture search where, it grew. We ended up growing this thing 3 times larger, adding all these skip connections, switching out GRUs for LSTMs, changing the normalization. There's a lot of just nuanced trial and error, not a lot of it really driven by theory, a lot of it just driven by, what happens if we do this? And then let's retrain the net again and then listen to it with our ears. And the thing here is that even if the loss is going down, it doesn't mean that it's going to sound better. Um, yeah, a lot of it was ear based, and we were able to find configurations that could generate music, and it worked particularly well for metal, black metal, math rock, genres where like the range of timbres was very narrow, yet the patterns were diverse, and also the tempo really fast. And it turns out like combinations of these things made for a particularly good data set for these unconditional autoregressive generators that would generating at the sub millisecond scale one sample at a time. And it didn't really work for electronic music or dance music all that well. But things like voice also worked really, really well. So our first paper we published at NIPS, it was on generating black metal, and most people who were publishing this research, they were publishing the results like this, but we wanted to publish it on Bandcamp, because we're a little bit more musicians. So this is one of our first examples. We trained it on the same net. We trained it on all the Beatles hits, and let me just take you through what it sounds like when we train one of these. After the first epic, it still sounds like noise, and over time, it sounds more and more like the original training data. So here's an example of the beginning. Very noisy, very interesting kind of noise, though. Not a kind of noise I'm familiar with. See, now it's starting to sound like Poltergeist, like there's like spirits coming through the realms. You can kind of hear starting to hear the timbre of like Lennon and McCartney in there. Skip ahead. It's like, all right, it's like struggling to make music, sort of trying to piece together, but falling completely apart, which is a really cool sound effect. Like we had never heard any effect like VST plugin that or remix that could like make these warbly falling apart things. Which it's like its own music style, which is great. And the great thing about all these AI models is not like when they work well, it's when they fuck up, and like in a new way that no one like has never happened before. And then you could use that creatively. And that's what's really exciting. Because if this net did what it was designed to do, it would just memorize the training data and spit it back verbatim, and that's not even what we want. In fact, that we're trying to make new things, and we could might even get in trouble if we just recreated the Beatles song a little too closely. So after enough time. It gets some stability and it keeps going. I hear like drums, guitar, singing, bass, and it's like surreal, but it's music. It can keep going. So we were astonished that when we published our results like this, that critics were reviewing it and treating it as if it were music. I mean, we didn't get very good ratings, but we were impressed that anyone was giving us any ratings at all. Like people who were taking this in terms of, the narrative and history and culture of music. So we kept going. We're like, okay, let's do other genres. Let's do black metal because that's one of Zach's and my favorite genres, and it works really well. And one of the here we actually structured it into a listening experience with like an intro and an outro and songs, and the critics were like, "Huh, what it seems like to be an actual attempt to present the material in as enjoyable a context as possible." It's actually structured like a real music release. This is what the critics said. I was like, okay, no, this is definitely the future. This is like this is some new kind of entity that's not just, hey, here's some new AI results. It's like, okay, we're also entertainers, and we're like doing this thing, which is kind of exciting. So here is just what that black metal kind of sounded like. And this is the internet's busiest music nerd critiquing it. And let's have a listen.
The raw audio in the mix of that's really weird. It makes me smile because I'm actually kind of amazed by it. It obviously doesn't sound like much and is not that inspiring from a compositional standpoint, but the aesthetic is there. I mean, it's not perfectly clean and well assembled and smoothed out like the way that Krallice's sound is, but to me it sounds like I'm honestly listening to a live demo of Krallice. There's kind of a
Yeah, passes the black metal Turing test. And so another component to this is when we did this, Krallice, it's a metal band. We didn't ask them permission. This was more like a ask them forgiveness kind of thing. So then we actually reached out and asked forgiveness. We're like, hey, we trained a neural net on the raw audio of your album. We used it to generate this AI album. Let us know if you want us to do a takedown or if we're misrepresenting your art. And then they immediately responded. They were like, oh, whoa, this is awesome. I don't feel misrepresented at all. Thanks for asking. I'll even think about collaborative ideas. So, this was the beginning of realizing, like, hey, actually, artists really want to work with these tools. And in fact, maybe it's easier to approach musicians, not as musicians, but as coders. And we've had a lot of success with this. So the lunacy continued. Here we tried a different genre. We tried skate punk. And one curious element about these unconditional models is that they don't know anything about English. They're just recreating the timbres and patterns and sounds of singing. And there's no words in there. In fact, it's doing the whole band all at once. These aren't individual layers. It's synthesizing the master. So it's kind of funny to imagine what words are they singing. So here is a fake video which has been edited to look like they're playing with fake lyrics. Yes. So without yet having a model where you could just give it lyrics and it would synthesize the full music, we had to do these like little shortcuts to try to approximate that experience. So here we used Cannibal Corpse, and Cannibal Corpse, they're one of the earliest death metal bands. They're famous for their gory horror-esque lyrics. In fact, their whole discography of a dozen albums is pretty much the same aesthetic and lyric style the whole time, which makes it a great data set. So we threw all of their lyrics into a GPT-2. We fine-tuned it, and it made 10 hours of lyrics. We went through and curated to make sure it stayed on topic. Interesting thing about GPT-2, since it's been originally trained on lots of Reddit, it will diverge into political debates. So we had to filter all that out and just keep the horror murder stuff, so that's kosher. And so here, whenever we detect the singer, and we do the vocal detection here using a new method where, okay, so the sample RNN generated the full master, all the instruments, right? Then we used a wave unit, a source separation model to extract the vocals. So now we have this new track that's, silence, 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 vocals, silence, vocals. And there we can just set a threshold so we know when the vocals are coming. Whenever we detect a vocal, we now put lyrics on screen. And they're not the lyrics that are being sung, but you can't really understand the vocalist anyway because it's death metal, and that's the humor of it. Okay, so here it is. So this was a live stream that was running 24/7, just inventing the lyrics. It turns out it's very expensive to live stream HD video 24/7, so it's just an archive. But lots of things you can do in the world, this world of generative music. And we eventually got this method so good. Earlier we had to do a lot of curation because most of what these neural nets generated didn't sound great. It wasn't listenable. You couldn't just throw it on shuffle and listen to the whole thing. But eventually we were able to figure out how to make that work for certain genres, death metal being one of them. So this other death metal generator has been running for over 2 years, nonstop. Here's an example. We were trying to contribute something to the style, and no death metal has ever sounded like this before. So hopefully a whole generation of imitators of humans attempt to try to play this. That's the goal. And the original band was quite weirded out. They're like, Skynet is writing our next album. We have successfully, crossed off the bucket list, made one of our favorite bands feel weird. So one of the things we learned is that we could just cold email musicians to be like, hey, you want to work with us? And almost all of them say yes. And one of these artists that actually wanted to step up to the plate and say okay, AI generated music, can I imitate that? Can I copy it? Can I learn from it? Can I have it boost my own skills? So I'm gonna throw it to Harry just to do maybe a little intro explanation before we throw on this episode.
Yeah, cheers, TJ. I always love every single time hearing you talk about your work. I think one of the key things that struck me then and strikes me now is that we're looking for ways to have new compositional ideas. And I guess much like a songbird, original ideas in expression or in composition is just worth its weight in gold. And I think so much of music, there's so much music in the world, it's stunning, but I've always loved the more experimental ends of production and music, because I felt like they go to places which maybe have never been touched before with composition. And if you look at the Aphex Twins and the Venetian snares, and I think that's something that myself and CJ like have a connection to. I realized that I was longing for that in music making from a very, very young age. And I think the generative compositional ideas that come from the work that he's making, there are those moments where it starts to feel like it's standing on the shoulders of what humans have made. And it can be a phrase. So it's not always the whole composition. It can be a very small piece that can have huge value. So for me as a musician, I've actually been in competition with machines my whole career. So I'm a beatboxer like through and through, but some of you may not really know what that means. And maybe some people have seen aspects of that on YouTube. But I grew up in London, I was surrounded by electronic music, and my job became to not just imitate, but to try and really bounce off the sounds that were happening around me musically, like with my voice. And because these sounds were very mechanical and machine-like and electronic, I started to develop many, many techniques that allowed me to perform like a machine. So my whole life, I've tried to be in that competition and leveled up and grown as a musician. But when I met CJ, I realized I could actually have a machine sound like me. And there's some kind of mirror image competition there that I think is really healthy. And I think it definitely is connected to a lot of the things you've seen in competitive, like the benefits of competitive AI relationships. For example, in game theory, in Go and in chess, which is very established, what you see is machine-like play in, for example, chess, and these kind of unnatural moves. But when you study them, there's all these lessons which are now being integrated into human play, and humans are learning off machines. And I think what I've been doing in my career and in my relationships with CJ, I became very interested, how can I learn from CJ in terms of, the competition. So I partnered up with Nokia Bell Labs, which used to be Bell Labs, and I had a relation there called Experiments in Art and Technology, which is a very old program. And they came to me saying, we invented speech synthesis. We were one of the first to ever push that forward. Can we actually take things further? So we started to compose and write and make a film called We Speak Music, which was all about my competition, exploring the future of voice and technology. But with CJ, it's like, can I write and compose with his technology? Can I create a voice-based piece? So this is what we were interested in, and I think that's what he's gonna share now.
Awesome, thank you, Harry. So we got 2 episodes here. First episode, it's gonna show Harry and I working together, and then the one after that is the spectacle music video. It's gonna be great. All right, hold on to your seats, folks. Stay tuned. Here we go.
In 1966, Bell Laboratory engineers partnered with artists to create a series of experimental performances. Today, that very fusion between art and technology and the questions surrounding creativity is something that is more important than ever. My name is Reeps One. My speciality is to pair voice with technology. I've spent my life learning how far I can push the musical instrument that is my voice. Working in collaboration with Nokia Bell Labs, now I'm going on a journey of discovery across the world to understand more about this art form and how it's inspiring communities, scientists, and engineers alike.
Being alive means paying attention to the artists, engineers that are trying to say something.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For centuries, humans have expressed creativity through our voices. These are what makes us unique and what artificial intelligence is starting to bring into question.
AI could be compared to something like a nuclear bomb. There's two sides to it. One, that our space shuttles can be powered by this. On the other hand, a destructive power. And it's up to humans to be conscious and compassionate enough to do one and not the other.
Now machines can be programmed to learn how to mimic the human voice and begin to not just learn, but create.
At the South by Southwest Hackathon, our project was called Deep Idol. We decided to teach a machine to recreate Kurt Cobain's voice. So we fed this neural network examples of Kurt Cobain. And at first, it's like, it's just white noise. And then a day later, we heard, Jesus. And we're like, what? We kind of looked at each other. And it was not a result that anybody expected. It's kind of like a scientific accident that this kind of thing was that good. My process with Reeps, he'll send me some kind of audio to put through the machine.
So there's this new technique we can play with. Yeah. It's a lot faster. We can even generate.
I will run a deep learning experiment using a neural network. It's trying to figure out how to recreate the raw audio one sample at a time. Like, all right, here's part of the song. Guess what happens next? He wants to bring his beatboxing to a new technical level. If it takes machines to drive him there, then that's what he's gonna do.
I have no idea what to expect. Obviously, we've spoken about it, but I've not actually heard anything yet.
So at first, it usually sounds like noise at first. It's trying to learn you.
So this is the beginning of the process.
Very beginning.
This is the very start.
A few thousand iterations later. You can kind of hear.
It's just in the distance. Yeah. I can already hear it growing. It does make me think of like an embryo. It's obviously still not me, but immediately my harmonic, the shape of my mouth, I can start hearing in the audio that it's generating. It sounds like it's like trying to be alive, which, if I'm honest, makes me feel pretty uncomfortable.
It is searching. There's a giant hyperspace of all the possible configurations that this network could be in, and it's sort of navigating it in the way that a basketball rolls down a hill in 77 million dimensions. This particular experiment ended at 35,000 iterations.
Yeah, pause it. Play that again. See, I've not done that pattern before. It's mimicking my essence in some way. Because if I'm good at playing the piano, there's 1,000 pianos that other people can play. There's only one of these, and now is there two? Is that a creative act? Because I can do that pattern now. It's given me something.
So with the first method, the stuff we generated didn't really get rhythm. If we could have a sort of rhythmic template that it's forced to fit onto, then we could start having rhythmic beatboxing. So my immediate thought was a style transfer technique.
Hear that? I'm surprised it's done that exact rhythm, because that is one of like my patterns. I'm having a conversation with this technology, which is something I think everyone is going to be forced to do very soon.
Here, we came and we had a chat, and then we opened the door and I walked back in and I was like, whoa.
So science fiction actually was quite damaging to the use of this technology, because people associate it with fear, loss of power, dominance, when really these tools are insanely empowering. So being a part of the EAT program, I'm here to come in and try and rewrite the narratives and see how people can work with this type of technology. Could I, like, collaborate with this?
I'd like you to.
Could this machine push me further than I've ever gone before? It's the first time in my life I've met something that's like me. I should be scared. I think I'm more inspired than anything else. That's a new challenge.
Game on.
So this project started with a premise around voice. My responsibility was to find a new way of generating voice, a new way that someone can interact with voice. The people I've met have led me to a very strange and exciting story that has lessons not just for musicians and artists, but every single person that breathes through this instrument. One, two, three, four, five. One, two, three, four, five.
En dan voor Pizza Brosum. Dat is het. En voor VDM. And this experience just.
Yay!
So watch it with fresh ears and eyes. But yeah, CJ, I guess yeah, it's up to you. Like, how is there any other context that I could give, or just like before we move on, or what do
Oh
you
well,
think?
what are the long lasting effects of you having interacted with your vocal twin?
Yeah, so I my whole style has definitely changed just through my collaborations with CJ. There's another one that's more recent that's been very impactful for me over the pandemic, which maybe I'll share a bit about. But just yeah, uh, working with AI systems to understand myself better. There's all kinds of technical phrases and ways of writing, and that's what that piece really was. It was I came at it as a composer, and the phrases are true and generative, but the whole piece is about how my relationship with it grows, and it actually happens in the piece. So when I come in, I speak, then I sing, and there's this understanding of one another in this space, which is the anechoic chamber in New Jersey at Bell Labs. And then there's this pause. And for the second half of the piece, it's like a dance. There's this back and forth and there's this relationship together. So I was trying to really be true to the technology, not to play to sensationalism and sci-fi. I was thinking, how can I actually have a relationship with this? And to this day, I see it as emotional, and I think it's something that we still don't really have a word for, is when something is simultaneously an other and also yourself. So when you create data sets for training, it is you, that's your data. But when it goes through this system, you find a new way of meeting yourself and hearing yourself and learning about yourself. So yeah, I'm still really in love with that process. And many people around me, even to this day, struggle to see that as an emotional thing, like an emotional relationship. But I think it's such a beautiful mirror where you can see things about yourselves that no other human could observe, and also generate ideas that maybe you have pushed forward, but the system has really like found it from what you've given it. So I'm an artist through and through. I'm not an engineer or a coder, but I love the process, and also finally just on a technical level, like I've done a lot of like 200 BPM percussion like practice with this system, and it's made me a lot more technical as a performer as well. So I could sing praises about it for a very long time, but I'm interested in the narrative. I'm interested in what I can learn. And I'm also interested in how few people understand it or see it as like meaningful, because it's actually similar systems are influencing all of us all the time, and they're sculpting us. So yeah, that's my thoughts on how it's kind of affecting me from my art to how I think about it.
Brilliant, Harry. That's awesome. That's really inspiring. Incredible. Okay, well, but before we open it up to discussion with the other attendees who have given their time here, I'm going to show you just a few more examples of other things that you can do in the vocal AI realm. So this technology, touches on the whole deepfake phenomenon. Interestingly enough, people have also deepfaked us. This is our fake video production service in Ukraine. I don't know who did this. We find it funny though. Let's see. I'm gonna skip ahead. I'm gonna show you. OpenAI Jukebox. This came out a year ago, and finally now, we have a model which is powerful enough that you can give it lyrics. You give it lyrics, genre, even an artist. This can also be fine-tuned trained on your own custom data sets, which we've done with Hexorcismos, and we made like tree ball, electro cumbia music. But here it's imitating the style of classical pop as Frank Sinatra. It doesn't exactly sound like Sinatra, but it's pretty damn close. And we made him sing this Britney Spears song. Pop fusion, of course, it's an impossible cover because Sinatra was dead before the song was ever written. So let's listen to it. And this example was curated from like several dozen. You know, this was the best one. So not all of them come out this good.
Your taxi, I'm slipping under. With a taste of a poison paradise. I'm addicted to you. Girl, you know that you're toxic. And I love what you do. Don't you know that you're toxic?
Yes, Jukebox, very powerful model because of the lyrics conditioning. And it took, you know, multi-million-dollar budget just in GPU credits alone to train it, and so it's been, you know, released open source for fine tuning, which is great. Interestingly enough, this Sinatra video, of course, got a copyright takedown pretty fairly immediately, but you know, this whole realm of, you know, borrowing someone's style, likeness, it's a gray area in terms of copyright law. So we thought we'd ask attorneys. We got the help from the EFF, who recommended us to specialists, and they were confident that actually this song falls under fair use. And fair use is an American copyright law thing. Different countries do it differently, but most of the suing is happening from major labels, which they're strongly British American centered. So those laws end up being the ones that kind of dominate in the space. But luckily there's this gray area where if you take someone's work and change it up significantly enough where, you know, it's sufficiently different, it's not trying to, you know, pretend to be that artist, and it isn't interfering with the amount of money that artist could be making. You know, in this case, it's just a free video, and doesn't directly copy anything, then you know, it's good to go. It's fair use. You can claim it as your own. So we made the argument to YouTube, and they were like, "Oh, okay. Actually, you know, this is totally legit," and the takedown was reversed. Although the songwriting, the lyric credit goes to Britney Spears, of course, or Britney Spears' songwriters, of course. But we actually commercially own half of this video, which is interesting. So we brought it back from the dead, and we're gonna have to you know, AI music's gonna have to tackle this weird gray area, and this you know, isn't a court precedent. It's just like a YouTube had decided it. The labels kind of decided it. So this, you know, doesn't mean that future examples will be, you know, fair use in this way. And every example is, you know, it's case by case, but it's very promising if you're an artist and you want to remix in this way, that there's a path toward having that freedom. Other interesting things that Jukebox can do is that you can fuse subgenres together, because each genre is a style vector, actually each artist, so you can like add them together or even subtract them. So if here we added funk plus deathcore plus gent Meshuggah, and what ends up resulting, and not many stylistic fusions experiments like this really worked. Actually, most of them did not work. When trying to fuse two different genres, it would just turn into noise or talking. But this one was actually able to mix the chug of like a deathcore breakdown with the like of funk, and you'll hear it in this riff. So take it away. And even though Jukebox is a year old, like the amount of exploration of what its potential is like has been only explored minimally. This is yeah, it's a great model to play with, and to jump in with if you're just starting. They have like there's a collab notebook that you can run on Google's GPU service and start from there. Yeah, so this is like we're entering into a new world of sampling, where we can now synthesize music that quotes a particular era without directly plagiarizing, copying any previously published recording. And so we did this for funk, in a collaboration with Keon Christ, who's a hip hop producer that's worked with Kanye West, and the origins of hip hop start from like remixing old vinyl records. Chuck D from Public Enemy says like the beauty of rap is that it made up for a large part of its lack of melody for its sense of reminder. But then what happened is that the major labels started suing each other for using samples, like even like small snippets, and that they won those cases. So then everyone was really afraid to sample records anymore. And Public Enemy, they were sampling hundreds of records, hundreds of them, and just making these really dense collages of like old sounds. So now what we did was we generated 12 hours of funk. We ran it through this copyright plagiarizing detector PEX. We ran it on all these services, we checked it against all copyrighted music, and there's zero overfitting. So we released it as public domain, and we called it No Soul. And we made this little interactive tool where you can explore all of it, which is nice. Let's see. Pull it. So this is great. So now the sample library exists, and it it's really hard to synthesize soulful singing. Like how do you do that and have it actually even sound like it's from the 70s or something? But here it is. Other techniques that you can use that aren't neurosynthesis. This is what we did for last year's Eurovision. We actually used Vocaloid, and you can use Vocaloid to generate death metal singing, kinda. So it turns out there's this whisper setting, and if you add distortion to it, it kind of sounds like death metal singing. So let me just show you an example of. Oh yeah, and another hack you could do, since they're only built for English and Japanese, to do German, you have to approximate it with English syllables. And last model I want to show you is Tacotron 2. So this is a text-to-speech engine, but it turns out you can give it rap. And so in this example, it was given Jay-Z's acapellas, and now he raps the Book of Genesis.
God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made...
Good. It's a really good technique for generating rap. So anyway, in conclusion, the end is near. We're selling merch. Takeaways for you. If you're in academia and you're publishing research in music, it doesn't necessarily have to be this dry, here's some statistical results thing. Like, I also recommend just taking a step forward into the music culture and releasing it in terms of that. Because people find it really, really fascinating, and they want to know what high tech is doing with music. It's like really, really interesting. And if you want to work with artists, like it's easier to approach musicians as coders and AI researchers than it is as musicians. So that is it for what I have here to show you, and now we can do some discussion. If you have questions, it is also 11. If you need to step out, you can. I will pass it on to you guys. Thank you very much.